to introduce our very next speaker. He was one of our most highly rated presentations last year, and so I mentioned change quite a bit in my presentation, and there was a great philosopher that said the only thing that is constant is change. And so I like to think of my kids make me think of that because it's constant. We were talking the other day about an 8-track. They didn't know what it was, much less a cassette tape or a CD. My 8-year-old plays it on YouTube. That's where music comes from. She doesn't understand it. And so here to share more of this about how change happens and the life cycle of business, with over 33 books and reports analyzing the changes impacting residential real estate, Stefan Swanepoel is widely recognized as the leading visionary in real estate trends. He is also well known for the extensive study of the real estate industry and commissioned by the National Association of Realtors a report called the Danger Report. As chairman and CEO of Swanepoel T3 Group, he is editor-in-chief of this S&P 200 and host of the annual T3 Summit. He has made a mark on this industry and on me personally, and I know he will keep you on the edge of your seats this morning. So everyone, please welcome Stefan Swanepoel.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Maybe I should do what Lauren wanted to do and say, good morning, Austin! Thank you very much, Lauren, for the invite, Danae, for the anniversary note that we're 60 years old. That is incredibly impressive. To our hosts, Paul and Tim, who's backstage, who put a lot of the event together, thank you very much for inviting me back to your event. I felt very much at home last year, and it is an honor to be here today. I've been asked to take you on a journey of transformation, but before I do that, I probably need to tell you where it started. I was actually sitting in Galveston at a Houston Association of Realtors strategic planning session, and I got a text. And it was from David Sharon and Tom Phillips. And they said, whatever you're doing, drop it and give me a call. I walked out of the meeting, I said to David, what is it? He said, I want to blow it up. I said, you want to blow what up? He said, I don't know, maybe my company, maybe MRIS, maybe MLS in total, maybe the industry. I want to change everything. I want to make it bigger, better, smarter, clean. I want to make it wonderful. I said, wow, that is such a bold step. He said, could you see if we could do something? Could we craft a message around transformation? So the presentation I'm going to give you today was born at his request 2-3 years ago, quite some time ago. Presentation has been refined. We've added a lot to it, but it came from the desire and the need from one of you to say, how can we make this industry better? How can I make my own organization better? And that's what it sometimes takes. So let's see if I can take you, if we can go to my slides on the big screen there. I'm going to try and take you through transformation, the life cycle of a person, a company, a business, maybe even an industry. So let's see if we can start. I started doing research at that point in time when David had asked me, yes, you guys know I like change and I write about change a lot, but I didn't really have something that I would call was transformational. And I was picking up some publications. I just listed one there. There are many which we all read. Not promoting this one above any other. But look at some of the headings there. Great ideas, new businesses, paranoia, disrupt yourself. And then there was even an article, blow up an entire industry. And I said, my goodness, maybe this might actually be possible. So I did some more digging and I said, so do companies go through some kind of life cycle? And I found lots of research on multiple places which said, yes, businesses do, almost like people. They're born, they go to school, they get raised, they have infancy, they become adults. They go through some kind of a cycle, and that was one example, merely just one example. And I said, all right, so that's a company cycle. Do you get other ones? And oh yes, of course. If you want to go public, if you want to go IPO, if you want to take a .com and go somewhere, yeah, there's also charts which also show you a cycle. I said, that one's not too significantly different from the other one. So that's an IPO. But what happens in our industry where we're relatively small? Most of the MLSs are teeny-weeny. I mean, we have some MLSs with 30 members. We have some associations with less than 10 members in the NAR organization. So we have more small people. So we have small brokerage companies, small MLSs. And I said, So is there a cycle for a small business? Again, I found many, found that one, and I said, wow, I'm starting to see a pattern here. There seems to be a cycle of everything. And although, of course, every cycle is not exactly the same, there's a lot of similarity in the pattern. There seems to be a beginning part. Then there's some kind of a middle part, which is usually growth or ramp up or size. Then you get to the top of the pyramid where you're the king of the hill, maturity. And then there's a cycle which you either have to reinvent yourself or you have to change, or you're probably going to slide down. I said, aha, interesting. So I wonder, can we even actually find information what David's looking for? The fact that it applies to companies and people and humans, does it imply that it works for an entire industry? Or can we do what we always say in real estate? You don't understand, we're different. It doesn't work in my market. You don't understand New Jersey. You don't understand whichever market you want to put a name against. I said, does it apply to an entire collective of us? Now, I got my real estate license in 1983. I've written 35 books. That's almost one every year. And with the exception of Surviving of Serengeti, every single book I've ever written about is about you people. It's about our industry. It's about the associations, the MLSs, the brokerage, the profitability, the mergers, the acquisitions, the consolidation. It's about us. I don't care about anything else. I care about us. So when David said, can we change us? I said, wow, it's a big ask. Is that even possible? So I said, right, let's dig some more. So I dug some more. What did I find this time? I found that Harvard had put out a study a while back, and they said, yes, even industries change. And they go through 40, 50, 60, 70-year cycles. It doesn't happen like a company overnight. It takes a much, much longer period of time. But yes, there are also stages. Again, look at it roughly. There's a beginning stage, an opening stage, a foundation stage, some stage where you get scale, your growth, you get volume, you get critical mass. Then you're at the top of your game, and then you're probably becoming a little bit of a bureaucracy at the top. And they gave examples of companies or industries. So yeah, I'm not going to read all of them. We'll get to some of them. But you can see there, chemicals, airlines, banks, restaurants, pulp, shipping, automation, shoes, soft drink, trucking, toys, rubber. I mean, they looked at lots of industries. I found that they looked over 140 industries. And I said, aha, great. Now we just have to find other industries which have done this before us, that have followed the path. And I said, oh my goodness, got it. All right. And everywhere where I looked, I said, food industry, drink industry, chocolates industry, women makeup, clothing, sneakers. Industry after industry, you would say, yep, there's the big 5, the big 7, the big 10, the big 12, and they all have multiple brands. So at some stage, it looks like everybody has gone through this grown-up stage. I said, wow, let's look at the stages individually. Let's try and identify what these stages are. The fourth stage, the one which I just showed you before, where the consolidation had already taken place, is what they call stage 4, the fourth vertical down. I said, let's start at Ethiopia. Let's start at the best of the best. What does that stage roughly look like? And it usually means that there's market dominance by a few people. The numbers, again, sometimes we ask how many MLS should dominate. It doesn't matter. You can pick 4, 5, 6, 7. But if you look at industries which have gone through the consolidation process ahead of our industry, whether it's the airline industry, how many airlines are there roughly, which are big, which are dominant? I mean, you can already list them on your fingers. Food, fast food, Nike shoes, or just shoes in general, sneakers in general. Banks, auditing companies, accounting companies. So many of the industries which we all use on a daily basis has already gone through certain various cycles. And they say it takes between 40 to 60 years. Did we say CMLS was 60 years? Yeah, sorry, 60 years old. So they say it takes 40 to 60 years for an industry to, and you can call it maturing up, you can call it growing up, you can say getting ready for the next 60 years. You don't have to speak badly of it. So when I look at this, it said the fourth stage usually has market dominance by a small group of people, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those companies together, the most popular number which they use is usually 4, but it's not a magical number. Don't get stuck up by a number. And they usually have somewhere between 70 to 90% of the market. And I thought, wow, 70 to 90%. I wonder what MLS looks like. We'll get to that in a minute. I said 70 to 90, so who would qualify for that? Which industries are like that? Are there industries that have actually done that? And absolutely there are. I could find on that chart and on many other pieces of research multiple industries that have matured or consolidated to a level where there are 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 companies that have a very, very, very large dominant market share. I've given you 3 examples. But I did not find that everybody was there, only a very small segments of the industries. So I said, what's the stage before stage 4? Stage 3. What is different from stage 3 to 4? Well, they're already big companies. They're usually some kind of regional companies. They've created mega companies. There's been some big consolidations, but there's still multiple players. There's a dozen or 2 dozen or 3 dozen or 4 dozen or 5 dozen. There's still lots of players. Life is still good and busy and active. Which kind of industries are in that space? Found many examples. I've listed you 3 where I could actually get some kind of numbers to indicate every time what does the top 4 have in market share. Now, I understand, just like brokerage companies in our beloved industry, every time we have to do rankings every year, we try to find out who's the biggest, and we have 4 companies putting their hands up, right? I'm the biggest on agent count. Well, I'm the biggest on office count. Well, I'm the biggest on profitability by agent. I'm the biggest internationally, and I'm the biggest on sales volume. So I understand that we can measure ourselves differently. But you look at all those stats, and you say at the end of the day, yeah, there are certain companies that find themselves repetitively in the top. So if you look at the companies in that, these are the companies which generally make up the lion's share of the top 4, top 5 kind of industry. Right, so what's before stage 2? 3, obviously stage 2. So what's stage 2? That's the growth stage. That's where we are starting to find scale. We are starting to grow respectively, quickly, probably outside of our geographical market. We've started seeing that in real estate recently, right? Douglas Elliman, Howard Hanna, Pac Union. Even Home Services' its acquisition the other day of Long & Foster could be seen somewhat in that case, where companies are starting to expand over and above just contiguous areas. As MLSs, we haven't generally done that. We tend to be contiguous. This is usually the stage where we usually say, well, maybe contiguous doesn't matter anymore. Maybe you could become something of a regional player of some kind. So I said, which industries are there? Wow, well, look at what's happened to the Sheratons and the Hyatts and the Hiltons and the Marriotts. So, I mean, the hotels, the Albertson food markets, the Whole Foods acquisition. So you can find multiple acquisitions which have said, these guys are getting to the halfway mark. And I said, why isn't it that I haven't found real estate yet? I've been looking for the brokerage market, I've been looking for the franchise market, I've been looking for the MLS market, and they haven't come up in my stats yet. And then I found them in stage 1. So the beginning stage is at the very early stage of that consolidation cycle or that growth cycle or that life cycle, which we acknowledge that we have to change. We're still fighting it a little bit, but we're starting to talk about, yes, let's do something. In most cases, the majority of the industry hasn't done anything yet. I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about the stage. So the buzz is there, the talk is there, but you have a handful of people, 5% of the industry, 10% of the industry, which are actively doing something about it. The rest of the industry says, yeah, it's not my cup of tea. Doesn't work for me. You don't understand my zip code, my market, my time. It's not for me. I'm going to retire in 2 years' time. I'm going to ride this sucker out. Not just MLS people saying that. That is, if you read the report in the document, it's a very traditional, because many of these companies have been around for 60 years, 50 years. What happens to people that they get around in the same position or job or industry or time for 50, 60 years? You tend to become a little complacent. You tend to become a little comfortable. It's hard to say, I want to blow it up. That's very, very, very strong leadership. It's hard to say, I want to transform. So I said, great, who's in this category? Oh, there we are, found us. So yes, we added up the franchise numbers, we added up the independent broker numbers, we added up the MLS numbers, and roughly, our top 4 companies, our top 5 companies have roughly those market shares. And again, market share not in everything they do, just roughly in head count, just to give you a feeling of where they fall. Even if those stats are out with 2 or 3 or 4%, which I don't think they are, they're not 90, they're not 70, they're not 60, they're not 50. We are, as an industry, at the early cusp of change. Now, that's not bad, that's not good. It's just an acknowledgement of where we find ourselves. The good thing is you can see many industries that have gone the path before you, so we can actually learn a little bit, because every industry is not the same. But we can learn out of experience, knowledge, traction, what's happened, what things struggled a little bit. And yes, we will have to adapt them for real estate. We'll have to adapt them for the MLS. We'll have to adapt it for nonprofit organizations like the associations. I understand that. Most of these other industries do not have part-time elected leaders. I remember the NAR leadership meeting, what was it, 3 or 4 or 5 weeks ago in Chicago. Elizabeth said that they counted approximately 21,000 people that serve on association committees throughout the country. We are driven by part-time elected people that serve us, and we need them. They are our leadership. They are the people that guide the industry. They are the people that make other decisions. They are, in many cases, our clients. They are, sometimes, the cases, the people that make our life so hard. So hard. So hard. So it's the good with the bad. It's who they are. We have to acknowledge that. So I took all of the charts before, and I said, well, I can't show you all of these charts. I shouldn't have. I couldn't have. Anyways, I did. But I put it together, and I said, let me try and draw up a standard chart. So this is not my chart. I took the other charts, and I said, let's wash them out, and let's see if we can find commonality. So for me, this is how the chart looks like at the end of the day. 4 stages, giving me 4 quick colors. The first one, basically, the industry is either formed, matured, created, licensed, or something life-changing happened, and the industry basically kicked off. It went through its growth stage, which is the green stage, going uphill. The maturity stage at the top, everything's going well. And then the last stage, you either have to change, blow it up, transform, or you're probably going to gradually slow down. 4 stages. It seems that every stage is anywhere between 1 to 2 decades in length. Because it's not one individual that changes, it's a collective that changes. It's hard to change as a group. So these things don't happen quickly. You're not going out of business this afternoon. You're safe. But tomorrow, day after tomorrow, next year, next year, we have to change if we don't want, as we always hear, remember, I don't know, was it Inman Conference 1997, San Francisco, where somebody stood up on the stage and said, we are going to be disintermediated. Remember that big word when we heard it for the first time? I'm not preaching that. I don't think for 1 second you're going to be disintermediated. But change you have to, and a lot, and significantly. But you can continue to provide the excellent services you do in a more progressive, more timely, more modern environment. You're not a bad company. You're not a bad industry. You're great. You're a little stale. You're a little dated. And that's okay. Change. Please change. So I looked at that and I said, okay, so how does that apply to real estate? And I look at real estate first, then we'll look at MLS, because this is the space we're in. These are the people we serve. Who are our clients? The brokers, the agents. That's what we always have to keep first and foremost. So I said, are they going through the same change? So I took those quadrants and I said, if every industry is going through these changes and it takes about a decade or 2, I can probably put about a decade or 2 on every box at the top. Let me try and determine where real estate is in this cycle. According to my best calculation, going back, I think that the first cycle was roughly in the 50s and the 60s in our industry. The next cycle, the growth cycle, was probably around about the 70s and the 80s. The maturing cycle was roughly about the 1990s and early 2000s. And I think that we are now roughly in the purple circle for the brokerage industry. So I thought you were going to ask me why. So I thought, let me put in the stats as I see it. So back in the 1950s, things started. First time we basically had MLS as an automated tool. We had technology. We'll talk about MLS in a second in more detail. We had open houses. It was after the Second World War. Brokers were king of the hill. They were in every neighborhood. The suburbs were growing. We had the GI Bill. Our industry was really getting off to a ground after Second World War. We were great. Then in the next decade or 2, we had a few things happen. 1972, Remax was born. Century 21 was born. ERA was born. Realty World was born. Gary Reeve Homes was born. Red Carpet was born. We suddenly had a surge of new companies come into our industry and say, see the shining sea. Let's grow, let's expand. Prior to 1970, no real estate company ever was outside the state. Not one. By the end of that decade, there were multiple companies. Now remember, we served them. So prior to 1970, we didn't have to be big. It was okay if we had a computer in one zip code because our client was in one zip code. 1970s, that started changing. 1990s, what happened is we had some outsiders enter our industry. And yes, we had some outsiders before, but they dabbled. So we had control data. We had TAW Airlines bought a real estate company at one stage, and Sears was involved. But they were in and out. They didn't really make a change. But by the 1990s, we had 2 or 3 players come in and started buying up entities. So the beginning of that consolidation in our industry happened. For the first time, HFS, which became Center, which became Realogy, right, started buying up Century 21, then ERA, then Cole Banker, then they started Sotheby's, then they did BH&G, then they did Climb Realty. I mean, so they've done activity after activity. Then Berkshire Hathaway said the same. So they bought Prudential, they created a new brand, Berkshire Hathaway, they bought Real Living, they bought a lot of independent companies. And you can see how that consolidation graph started working and clicking in the 1990s in our space. It actually grew up. And it looks like we almost matured. At the same time, there was another brand, Keller Williams, which also gained a lot of momentum. You don't have to consolidate to become big. You don't have to consolidate to be the best. Many people believe it is a great strategy to get you there, but it's not a requirement. There are great companies which are small independent companies. But the wave indicates, the wave seems to push that we will most likely consolidate, we will most likely grow up, you will most likely become bigger organizations. So then I said, does all of that apply to the MLS industry, or is that just our clients? So I did the same kind of calculation for our industry, but you will see I pushed the dates with about 10 years back, because we did not move until our clients moved. It's only when our clients started going national that we said, oh, we probably have to do regionalization. It's only when our clients started becoming national and consolidated that we said, well, let's start buying up other MLSs. We tend to move 10, 12, 15 years after our clients. Not because we're slow, because we move to serve our clients. So as they changed. So I wrote something up for the MLS industry. Now, MLS dates back officially, the furthest I could find it back in the NAR library was 1888. So we have a celebration next year, which we can do. We'll be 130 years old. Wow. But at the end of the day, the industry we know today roughly dates back to around about the 60s. The Book, Boris, More Data, PRC, Realtron. Places where David used to work, places where Del Ross used to work, places where Bob Goldberg used to work. Companies which don't exist today, not because they went out of business, because they themselves were acquired and rolled up and became bigger themselves. All of those contracts which were still then, in some shape or form, actually still exist today. They've just been replaced and updated in other companies. So we grew up basically in the 60s. Look what happened in the 80s. We had some regionalization. We had our first regionalization happen in the industry, so companies started getting together about a decade after, but then at the same time also, the internet came along, and we had some momentous IPOs, and we started thinking about, oh, this new toy, how's it going to change our industry? At the peak of our career, just look how many things were created. RPR was created, Zillow, Move, CRMLS, CoreLogic, Black Knight, Upstream, Bright, Smart, the Florida merger. Clearly, if you look at the activities is now. We're right at it. You're at the peak of your career. That's why this probably is the biggest convention you've ever had. There's more interest in MLS today than, to the best of my research, which I've done back to 1950, than has ever been. You are the king of the hill. This is your time. Danae may have said it, maybe in good faith. She is 100% on the money. This is your time. You are in the spotlight. There's enough to prove it. So the 20s and the 30s is only the next box. Now, these things don't happen with magical deadlines. You can't say it's a Y2K on the 31st of December it's going to change. It's a rough bucket. Remember I said it seems based on history, and you don't always follow history. It's just a good indication. Those are 10-year, 20-year kind of buckets, movement. So if all indications are that we are going to follow the path which everybody else has, we are coming to a crossroad. In the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, you're going to have to decide. Either you are going to be eclipsed by another MLS, or by an outside vendor, or by the market, or by the brokers, or by internal initiative, or by an outside initiative, or your funding's going to dry up, or your members are going to leave, or your leadership's going to do, or you're going to retire. I mean, something is going to happen. We know that. It's just going to happen on a big scale throughout the company, because it happens always. That's just life. It's just going to happen in a big stage, because there's pressure to make it happen. All right, so where are we then today? So I said, all right, let's go add up quickly the MLSs as I can. To the best of my calculation, there are approximately, at this point in time, this month, about 695 of you out there. Great number. If you go back to the 1980s, you were approximately 1,400, which is approximately double that number. So this is not a bad number. Congratulations. We have not stood still for the last 30 years. You did do something. We did grow. We did change. The dilemma is that at the pace which we've done it in the last 20 years, if we continue at that pace historically, we will have consolidated down to roughly the number which they're all saying we should, a handful, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, doesn't matter, by the year 2050, if we continue with the current pace. Nobody's going to allow that to happen. The clients, the customer, the market is going to demand that it happens sooner. When? It doesn't matter. It could be 2025, 2030. Who cares what the date is? It can't be 2050. That's too far. The chances that most of us are going to be in this room again in 2050 is slim to none. I don't think I'm doing the keynote. So we have to pick up that pace. And if we do look at the pace of the last 2 or 3 years, it has most certainly picked up. So if we say, let's not take the pace of the last 20 years, let's just take the pace of the last 12 months. If we could maintain the last 12 months, then we will have consolidated down to where everybody is predicting it around about 2030. More manageable date, but still, that's far. That's 13, 14 years. Now, our industry does move slow. Don't think I don't understand that. Painfully slow. I've said to many people, every year when I take a piece of white paper to write the trends report, I say, dear God, why me? Why should I do this again? And I honestly don't know what I'm going to write about. Every year when I sit down for the first time on the 1st of September, I say, isn't it going to be the same stuff as last year? And then Tom Phillip gives me a call and he says, I have an idea. Bob gives me a call and Paul gives me a call. And people give me a call and say, what about if? And you start researching, you start writing, and as you progress down that journey, the chapters start building themselves. But every year I say to myself, what's happened in 12 months? Have we really put more than lipstick on the you-know-what? All right, no, great. We're doing well. So what does our industry have to do to get to a decent number? I don't know what a decent number is. I just took the halfway mark is 50%. I can't even see 90%. It's just not in my current horizon. I can't figure that we'll ever get there. And of course we will, never say never, but not in the short term. So I said, this is not an exact list, this is not a top 10, don't go text it out to the world. I just said, let me go pull the numbers as I quickly see them of all the MLSs, and let me just quickly add up the numbers. And I said, okay, 85, 81, 80, 29, 34, here's a merger, putting up 16 with 9, 19. And I was trying to add up, and I said, what roughly would get us to half of the market today? I think this is 18 companies, but call it 20 companies. 20 would get us to the halfway mark. Some of these stats said that four companies should get us to 90%. We have already 20, which only gets us to the halfway mark. I mean, the bottom 500 MLSs have less than 1,000 members. There's nothing wrong with less than 1,000 members. Really, there isn't. It's hard to compete in today's era, today's environment, today's technology with that kind of number. Don't see it as a negative. Don't see it as wrong. There's nothing wrong with 1,000 members. It's just tough to compete against somebody who's got 10 times or 20 times or 30 times or 40 times what you can offer. So why aren't we transforming faster? What would make us not get to where we would like to get or could get or should get or what the industry thinks we should be? So I said, what prevents us? And I think these are the things that are unique to our industry. Most of us, I think with the exception of 12 of you in the room, most of you are run by an association, owned by an association, controlled by an association has some form of equity, or sits on your board, or some kind of control. That makes it complex. Because you're not driving ROI, you're not driving profitability, you can't necessarily always do what you'd like to do, because there is a higher purpose, there's a higher committee, there's a higher whatever, that tells you, nope, off the table. Right? It's like the old NAR Realtor.com agreement, right? Here's an agreement. This you can do, this you cannot do. That's tough. I'm not debating what's on the points, whether they're good or bad. I'm saying it's tough if you have to serve two gods at the same time. Your clients and somebody else who might have other motives. Not that the motives are bad. They're just in conflict. Membership-driven, the boards that control us, the associations that control our industry, are almost without exception association-driven. And we've heard the Greg Robertsons, which are in the room, and the Greg Larsons, and the Rob Hans, which have said there is inherently an MLS organization would like to get full participation, everybody, as many people as possible, at as low possible price and the best technology as possible. I mean, we're driving that. And our parents generally say, well, we're a professional body. We have membership, we have criteria, we have ethics, we have rules, we have regulations, we can kick somebody out. It's not open for everybody, if somebody's not a member, where they can't participate, and we want you to follow the rules. That is inherently, they're different. We know that. How do we manage that? Inconsistency in broker ones. I get so frustrated with the media when they sometimes say, brokers want that, or MLSs are like that, or associations are terrible. You can't paint with a broad brush. Many degrees or qualifications, whether it's engineers or architects or lawyers or doctors or pharmacists, are somewhat more similar because they go through a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 year degree process, and when they come out of a university, although they're unique, They have a lot of consistency in who they are. Our industry has no consistency. We are the most eclectic, I don't want to say functional because it's not true, but we are a charismatic, flamboyant, dynamic, extrovert, outgoing bunch of crazy, wonderful, smart, brilliant people. Truly. But we all have opinions, right? We all have a vision, we all have a dream, we all have a passion, we all want to do something, and it doesn't match. And yes, our industry does have a bunch of yahoos right on the one side, right? But they're here. You all have them in your membership. Some of you have them on your board of directors. We have them, they're part of us, and we have to deal with that. It's tough, it's hard. So inconsistent when we say that's not what the brokers want. Do we really think that a one-man office broker, which is a mom and pop working from home, is the same as what NRT or Home Services of America wants or Long and Foster wants? Clearly it's not. MLSs are each fairly different. An MLS serving 37 members and an MLS serving 85,000 members functions differently. A broker doing one deal a year, one deal every quarter is different from a NRT which does 165,000 or whatever it is. The number is, I don't know. There's a difference. So inconsistency, we don't know what our brokers want because they don't know what they want. Because they're represented sometimes by different group and different constituents to their ownership, to their membership, to the agent, and sometimes they change their meeting the day before the meeting because somebody called them. Hard to manage that. And then, of course, industry politics, we all know and love our industry very much for all of that. So what will drive transformation in our industry? Probably economies of scale. I think that is what's driving the current buzz on consolidation. We've got to get to critical mass. It is very hard to offer the best technology, the most recent updates, all the mobile stuff, to do all the changes, to integrate everything, to really offer the services, whatever it is, at the highest standards that we believe or the customers want, if you don't have the money to spend for it. I mean, you just can't. Doesn't matter if you get $400 a month or for a year or $1,000 a year. Multiply that with, I'm just picking a random number, 50, it still remains a small number. You multiply it with 85,000 members, you're a real company. You can now do things. You can put money in R&D. You can make the changes. You can lead. Tough to do that when you're small. Better use of technology. We've had some of our industry pundits say that the technology in our industry, in some cases, is what, a decade old? A decade and a half old? Don't take exception to it if you're a vendor in the room. It's not an attack on anybody. We don't, as an industry as a whole, whether it's our board's fault, our MLS's fault, our E's fault, the technology guys, the fact that we don't pay enough for the service, we want it cheap, we're not willing to spend on R&D, it doesn't mind what it is. We allow outside people, because I don't know how much you've spent on technology, but it can't be more than a couple of 100,000. If one or two of you in the room say, well, I've spent more than $1 million or $2 million, you're by far in the minority. Guess how much money was put in by VC company and investment banks into the residential real estate brokerage industry in the last 36 months? $3.1 billion. Whether that went to the Real Scouts or the Compasses or the Redfin, IPO, if you add that money, $3.1 billion according to my calculation. We didn't as an industry spend $3.1 billion. Your annual fees for all of the MLSs together, not just the ones in the room, the entire industry, all 695, I know Greg and I whiteboarded it out one day. We were trying to figure out how big that number is, and both of us couldn't get to an exact number. And we said, we think it's maybe about 750 million. And that was just a guess. That is a quarter of 3.1 billion. And that's an entire year's revenue from all of you. 4 times that was just invested in the last 36 months into potential disruptors, changers, people want to change the industry, change the paradigm. They don't have you in their sights. They have the industry in their sights. You're going to be collateral damage. They're not coming after you. You're not that important if you have 37 members. Why would I come after you? But they look at our space and they say $1.2 trillion of residential sales per year. That means that you guys are transacting that through some of your part. You can all take a percentage of that. 72 to $80 billion in commissions are expected to be earned this year. They're saying, give me 1% of that, 2% of that, 3% of that, and I can put this into a new .com company, multiply it with the 50 times X, take it IPO and become a billionaire. We're struggling to make ends meet. More capital, stronger leadership. if you are an outside company and you are given funding, even if you don't know this industry, the funding and the money will push you to become a leader. You guys are not being pushed to become leaders. You have to step up yourself. Damn it. Don't let the people go this by. Don't let them take the opportunity from you. You are the market. You are entrenched. If you screw it up, it's your own fault. Don't do that. Damn it, don't do that. You are there. Step up and be the leaders. You got it. You've got the relationship. You've got the networks. You almost all know each other. You know what's needed. The outside guys have to go first figure it out. And they will. Why? Because they will try one thing, fail at one thing, try it again, test it. They'll get it right at some stage. Our industry isn't so hard that if you give somebody $3.1 billion, he or she can't figure it out. They'll figure it out. They could make 2 or 3 mistakes. It doesn't matter. The investment banking guys say, we acknowledge that probably half of the people or 3/4 of the people we put money in will probably not succeed. They don't care. But if 1 or 2 of them succeed, the industry, the prize, our prize, is so large. Right, so I looked at other industries before I looked at ours, and I'll get to ours in a second. I said, so we're a service industry. We're not Coca-Cola. We don't have a product really. We don't really own the product. We don't bring the product in-house. We're more like, yes, the travel agents. And I said, so who are the 4 or 5 main players in the travel agency industry, or the hospitality industry, as we tend to call it? And I've identified them there. You can see those. I mean, you know that. And we've heard the travel industry so many times, so I'm not going to repeat the Travelocity or Expedia story or Airbnb. We all know that. But I looked at the components and I said, what's happening to each of the players? And I wrote down words which I found in USA Today and the news and Google and at TechCrunch. And I tried to read, I said, what did happen to them? And yes, they became less relevant, not irrelevant. There are still travel agents today. Abercrombie and Kent, still great. I mean, there's still, and new ones were created. I mean, Travelocity is a travel agency. Orbitz is a kind of a travel agency. So, but they did reinvent themselves. They did change. Cab drivers, yeah, they've been disintermediated to some extent. They're still around and we're finding licenses. But yes, they have changed. Hotels, consolidation, you've seen that. Airlines, again, you know those words. I just want you to look at the right-hand side and just look at the words, because then I said, all right, if I go to the doctors and the healthcare, now, we're no doctor. We don't need 7 years or 10 years of study to get in our industry. According to Wikipedia, you need 5 or 6 criteria to become a profession. We fulfill every single requirement that they say we should in spades, but one, education. We suck. In some markets in the state, in this country, you can join on a Monday, you can be licensed by Friday. That's a tad too short. You need to put more space in between, right? But we have ethics, we have national boards, we have committees, we serve, we do lobby. I mean, we do all the right stuff, but education. But these guys have tons of education. Guess what? Education doesn't save you from consolidation. Education doesn't save you that it isn't going to happen to you as well. Look at the same kind of words. Doctors gradually becoming less independent. They're working for Blue Cross, Kaiser, Blue Shield. I mean, they're starting to work for these big groups. Heard that one of the big groups the other day said that they had about 50,000 doctors under contract. Wow. That now starts sounding like NRT, home services. I mean, that's what it's starting to sound like. Some of them are converting to employees. They're not all doctors, because remember I told you, it's a 20-year process. So when you say, well, my doctor is still independent, sure. And there will be doctors who will be independent for another decade or 2. You don't flick a switch on an entire industry in one night. Nobody has that power. It'll take time, but it is happening. Hospitals are getting bigger and bigger, consolidation with the pharmaceutical companies, multi-brand ownership. Prior to 1990, not one person owned 2 brands in real estate in this country on a national basis. Nobody. 1990 is only 2.5 decades ago. Today, multi-brand ownership is common practice. Common practice. Zillow has multiple brands. Move has multiple brands. Realogy has multiple brands. Berkshire Hathaway has multiple brands. Today, it's fairly common practice. CoreLogic has been buying up companies. Black Knight has been buying up companies. DocuSign will probably go public next year. They're buying up companies. We will have multiple brand ownership. We already have it. It's already happened there. So I said, and where do we fit in? So I took it again. Agents, brokers, our clients, then the big organizations, the franchises, and to some extent that includes the leading RE groups as well, the kind of referral groups. And then us at the bottom, the sort of the more non-profit service kind of organization. And the words which on the right-hand side I wrote separately every time, but don't they sound awfully the same? We are a footprint of the market which we live in. You are the driver of this change many times with regard to the doctors and the pharmaceutical companies and the travel agents. You're driving that change. Why do you think that it will not happen to our own industry as well? It will. It is. It is here. I wanted to share with you that it is. So I said to myself, if all of this is happening, all right, okay, so maybe I can buy in what this guy on stage is telling me for a bit. Why is it happening? So I wrote down at the top, what's trying to drive this? What's this big next thing that we should be scared of? Because I'm not a kind of a guy that's scared of anything. So I don't want to be scared. So what are these things that if I should read about? And these are the things that I found as the 5 most common drivers that it would seem to me is driving all of these industries. Absolute transparency. Don't we hear it everywhere? You've got to open your books. You've got to be fair. You've got to share. You've got to do everything together. Number 2, everybody wants to do it my way. I'm different. My email, my news, my download, my functionality, my customization, my iPhone, right? Everything is these days is personalization. Connected communities. Facebook is walking around saying that at 2 billion people, they are arguably now the biggest community in the world because they are bigger than India and they're bigger than China. If they had a constitution, they would be the biggest country in the world. Now, they're obviously not a country, but is there a big difference? Because they actually know more about their community than America knows about its own citizens. It has a charter. No, it doesn't have a country, but everybody updates their profile. Everybody updates their photo. You don't update your DMV photo, or your driver's license, or your voting, or your passport unless you have to. So we are creating communities everywhere, whether it's in our church, online, our Facebook group, a private group which you're in. We're creating communities everywhere. Intelligence systems. How many times have we heard from people? I know recently, what was it? Real Scout, right? Andrew Flackner. Machine learning, artificial intelligence. It's coming, it's happening, it's changing. What's the other one? Ask DOS, which is now funded or driven by Watson Technology. Trelora has now just got funded. So we keep on having examples of people saying, I'm getting money to try and bring artificial intelligence in some shape or form to our space. That doesn't mean, again, it's going to replace a realtor. It means it can do some of the boring, monotonous work that you're currently doing could be done by machine in a slightly different, enhanced way, which is probably fine. You're buying your own airplane ticket. You're booking your own movie ticket through Fandango, whatever. So you are already learning to do things your own way. Google has artificial intelligence in. Uber has artificial intelligence in. So why can't the MLS have artificial intelligence in? The question is just how much? The question is when you start, when do you end? How far does it go? It will start the process, if it hasn't already, to some small degree. Last one, digital transformation. Everybody is predicting or saying that technology will play a bigger role. We predicted that if you read my book, 1997, Realistic Confronts Reality, we predicted that. It's now 20 years later, we're still talking about it. It clearly has happened. Yes, Amazon has happened. ATMs has happened. But Netflix has happened. Amazon, Whole Foods has happened. But we're still on a journey. So who's driving all of this? Who's in charge? It's not Dale Stinton anymore. Is it now Bob Goldberg? No, probably not him. Is it the guy at Amazon? It's probably the one which everybody keeps on saying it's the customer. In our case, the customer might be the broker. In this case, the customer is the guy who's got the checkbook, right? The buyer, the user. Which, unless you look at the MLS industry, that means this is you too. I'm a big user of Amazon. I think I get 3 orders a week from them every single week for the last 3 years. Great stuff. So I use the online services, whether I use AA.com or Delta.com or Orbitz.com. So I'm as guilty as charged. I am a big fan of technology. So the customer is driving it. Now, if the customer is driving it, what impact will that have on our world? Because again, remember I said the only thing I really passionately care about are you people, my people. I feel like I'm the custodian of the industry. I'm the caretaker. I want to make sure we get treated well. So I think the customer is going to force us to change the real estate transaction. Probably already has. The fact that you now have Zillow searches and Zestimates and online looking and large portals and leads and lead generation, the customer is already demanding that transaction gradually change. The fact that we're doing electronic signatures instead of wet signatures, we're doing DocuSign. No, not everywhere. Remember, the change is 20 years. But do we have Zillow somewhere? Yes. Do we have CoreLogic somewhere? Yes. Do we have Black Knight somewhere? Yes. Do we have DocuSign? Do we have Real Scout? Yes. Now, Real Scout might have only read in, I don't know how many the number is, 10 million photos. That's a drop in the bucket. 5 years ago, it was 0. Or 4 years ago, it was 0. So we've gone from whatever number it is today to a decent number. In 2 years' time, it'll probably be double that number, triple that number. And you will see the growth curve of all of the initiatives. Places that just got money. Real Estate Webmaster is expanding. Teradatum is expanding. They're all in a growth mode. We as an industry have to be in a growth mode. So if we're going to change the transaction, if they're going to change the transaction, that means they're going to change the brokerage model, which by default they've already done in some cases through the home services and the Realogy. That will change the relationship with the agents. We see that now starting to happen in Compass and in Redfin and some of the other models. And that, of course, at the end of the day, if those are our customers, that will change us. We might be a little bit later to come to the party because we see the change happen there, but it will happen. So what do I want you to do? I want you to promise CMLS, your leadership, your board, your association, and if you would like to promise me that if you do invite me back, that you will try and innovate. You will try and, as David said, blow yourself up, transform yourself, make a difference, lead, be better than you can be. Don't let some outside guy with funding with $3.1 billion take it away from you. Don't let him do that. He doesn't have to do that. You can win that. All right, so I need to probably now catch up. So I need to try and tell you, what do I think you should do? I put it for you in a few summary slides, and I think it's fairly easy. Let's start with the contrary, and then we'll go to the positive. So what I don't want you to do is don't be complacent. Don't think it's okay. Don't think it's overrated. You don't have to be worried that it's happening today. It's not going to take you out of business today. You have time. But we're talking time in a matter of weeks, months, a few years. Don't be complacent and say, it won't ever come to New Jersey. It will never come to Alaska. I'm in Hawaii, it doesn't matter. San Diego is different. We're part of USA, right? The consumer's everywhere. Amazon drops shipments everywhere. Realtors are in every zip code. They're everywhere. So just don't be complacent. Don't say that you don't think it's needed. Just implement it, at least a piece at a time. Bureaucracy, try and minimize the bureaucracy if you can in your organization. Committees are hard to run. They're a legacy, we have them. But there are numerous associations and numerous leaders and numerous MLSs that have shown that they can lead by example and they can actually manage even the fact that they have boards as well. Bright is a great example. HAR is a great example. They all have leaders. They all have the same people you do. But they've come to a position where they're able to manage that board effectively. Not manipulate, not control, not mislead. They're as transparent as everybody else, if not more so. Next one, sacred cows. Don't ever tell me there's a no-fly zone. You can't do that because the Constitution, the articles, the memorandums, the person, the provost, the founder, the creator, the previous CEO, somebody said there's a member, there's a lady, there's a person who's been a member for 42 years, and Susie said you can't. Screw that. You can't say something's not on the table. You may decide to put it back on the table. That's okay. But you don't leave it on the table because somebody manipulates to put it on the table. Everything. When Connecticut merged the other day, right, with Smart MLS, one of the great things they did is they took everything. They didn't say, we can't have this, or we need to do that, or who's going to become the CEO, or what office are we going to use, what name we're going to use. They took everything off the table and said, we will go through everything one for one, and we will be open-minded about that. Please, please be open-minded. Last but not least, if you do decide to take small decisions, just understand that nobody will notice. If you say, well, we did change the Constitution, we added a comma behind paragraph 2.6. Probably doesn't cut it. Again, I'm joking because I was there. I have been an MLS director. I was one for 4 years. I was an association director for 2 years, and I served as president of my association, elected because I was a broker as well. Also, I am you. I truly, truly am you. I love you more than you know. So, don't take small decisions. It's hard to take big decisions. So here's what I would like you to do. Please, let's see if we can take this as a takeaway. This is not CMLS's recommendation. This is not David's recommendation. This is not Danae. This is not Lauren. This is me talking. Here's what I think you should do. Have open minds. Consider everything. Be open-minded. Not everything that is new is good. But not everything that new is bad. Just look at everything, get smart people to help you, brainstorm through it, debate it, thrash it, turn it upside down, put it on the floor, put it back on the table. Just look at it as much. And don't say that we looked at it in 1972, so we don't have to go back. I don't know, every 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, you've got to recycle. Why? Because the rules have changed. The rules change all the time. One day we didn't have iBrokers. Next day we had iBrokers. One day Compass wasn't funded. The next day it was. Everybody's now excited about Redfin. Why? They've been around for 10 years. We've written about them 8 times in the trends report. Why is it now suddenly exciting? Everybody says, oh, right? Real guy says, well, I'm interviewing them now. Why now? Yes, they've gone public. So things can change because they are now 1.8 billion market capitalization. And I'm not promoting Redfin. I have no shares in Redfin. But just for a second think, I'll take Remax as a simple example, and I could use anybody. Remax is a great company, in my opinion. 45 years old, born 1972. Didn't do a lot of things wrong in their life. They did almost everything right. Has gone to 100 countries. Is probably in the top 2 or 3 in just about every market they're in. If you had to say pick 1 or 2 of the best companies in real estate we've ever had in the last 40, 50 years, you have to put Remax on that list. Great company. It is now also a public company. Remember, 100,000 agents plus, Redfin 1,000 agents. Remax 45 years, Redfin only 10 years. Redfin's made many mistakes by its own acknowledgement. Has struggled to get into certain markets. It is still struggling to prove its own model. They both went public. They're both market capitalization at the moment is exactly identical, 1.8 billion. Where's the fairness in that? Where's the logic in that? Right? This guy's done almost nothing wrong, 100 countries, 100,000 agents, been in the market for 45 years, great company, same value as somebody who only started 10 years ago. Can you be eclipsed by somebody new? Oh, you bet your bottom dollar you are going to be. Of course you are. I mean, Dave Liniger was thrilled with the 1.8 billion valuation until Glenn Kelman got it. Then he said, well, shouldn't mine be 8.1 billion? Probably. The market doesn't say so. The market says, sorry, you're equal in my eyes. And we could say the market is wrong. Doesn't matter what the market says. Okay, number 2, next one. Change the rules, yes. They are going to change the rules on you, so why don't you try and change the rules before they change the rules? You currently own the rule book. Why are you telling them to change the rules and you're sitting back and go like, oh, damn. They now said you don't have to be a member of a contiguous state. Oh, that's so brilliant. You can already do something like that tomorrow. And I only mention that not because I'm promoting it, but it came up as a question yesterday at the T3 MLS consolidation workshop where somebody said, does expansion have to be contiguous? And the whole room looked at each other and said, haven't actually thought about that. The answer is no. That's all I'm mentioning. I'm not here to promote it to say, I'm just saying it came up yesterday just as a casual thought. And then last but not least, play to win and play to win big. Whether Greg Larson's and my calculation of 750 million in fees is an accurate number, whether it's underscaled, whether it goes up a little bit, whether our industry is 1.2 trillion, whether the agents are going to make 80 billion, whether there's 86,000 real estate companies according to NAR, whether NAR has 1.3 million members or the licensees according to Rello is 2.5 million at the moment, doesn't matter. You have a great, large, wonderful sandbox, which is yours. Don't give it up. You can win big. It is a delight to be here. David, thank you for the encouragement to start this presentation. To all of you, I hope you have a great future. Thank you very, very much.